So we conducted a survey, and our target audience was the students, uh, which shows that 67% of them currently own an Apple device right now, and 78% of them have owned an Apple device at some point in their lives. And now, there's a 50-50 chance that most of them own more than one Apple device, which not only shows that customer loyalty is a huge part of Apple's success, but also Steve Jobs, who played an influential role in its huge part in its success. They also have many specifications and features in their products, which only not only goes with their iPhone, but also different devices which they produce.
Living Under a Rock, 1955. Birth of Steve Jobs in San Francisco. 1976. Jobs started Apple with Steve Wozniak. It was a success with Apple 123 modules. 1984. Macintosh Computers was launched. 1985. Jobs was forced to resign from Apple. 1986. Founds Next Computers and co-founds Pixar Animation Studios. 1997, Jobs returns to Apple Inc., becoming CEO. 2001, launches iPod and revolution in music industry. 2007, first of its kind revolutionary 3G iPhones launched. 2008, launches ultra-thin MacBook Air and launches App Store for third-party app developers. 2010, iPad is launched. 2011, end of an era, Steve Jobs passes away and Tim Cook becomes CEO. 2019, Apple is named the most valuable company.
So now we're going to talk about personalities and qualities of Steve Jobs. He was an innovative entrepreneur, and he started the first Macintosh. He was also the first inventor to introduce graphic user interface, which is basically makes it easier for the users to interact with with the applications in the system using the mouse. He also was a stubborn perfectionist. When he first launched the Macintosh, he wanted it to say hello because the computers back in the day were too big and not appealing to the audience. When he wanted it to say hello because it could be more appealing and more playful and childish, and it could be more appealing to the audiences. And which in a scenario where it wouldn't work, he needed it to say hello. He was also a creative thinker. After being fired from Apple as a CEO, he launched a new company called the Next and created a product called the Black Box, which is basically all focused on the design and how it was made, rather than what the operating system was. There was no operating system in the device; it was just a black box. Um, the main objective of this product was to gain back the CEO position of back into Apple, so that Apple would buy his product and buy the company, which eventually he succeeded. He was also a creative. He also was a follower of Zen Buddhism. When he went to India, he learned the ways to get enlightened and think differently and be more creative with his works. He was not a philanthropist comparatively to other huge entrepreneurs at that time of his stature. He wasn't as charitable as other entrepreneurs, such as Bill Gates. He didn't donate as much as he should have to other charities. He was also a passionate worker. Whenever he was sick or he was ill, his illnesses didn't stop him from coming back to work and working on other products for Apple, such as the iPads and the iMacs.
I'll be talking about transformational leadership. So first, what we can do is to actually define it, and I'll be using the definitions from the early stages of this leadership, which is theory from McGregor Byrne. And he actually defined it as it's to stimulate and inspire followers to both achieve extraordinary outcomes and, in the process, to develop their leadership capacity. So what Burns actually meant here by leadership capacity, it's also the second name of this leadership style, which is a coaching leadership style. So what they mean here is that the leader actually coaches the follower to be able to become their own leader. So quick recap about transformational leadership. There is a strong leader and follower relationship, and this is something that we can definitely see in Apple. So in an interview that Steve Jobs had, He actually mentioned this as well. Like in their company, they meet 3 hours a week, they touch base, and this is something he believes in. So his whole day, what he said that he spends, is meeting with teams. Secondly, is that the leader examines and the follower's motivators. What motivates the follower? Third point is that a key aim for the leader is for his followers to achieve growth and success. And an example of this is that in the early days of Apple, what Steve Jobs actually did is they recruited someone that didn't really have a lot of technology experience, but someone that actually showed that they have the passion in them to actually work in the company. Then the third point is that this leadership style, intrinsic and extrinsic tools are made available for the followers to flourish. And this can be included in monetary terms, which is extrinsic, and intrinsic. Intrinsic terms in this sense would be creating a vision. So Steve was very good at creating a vision, and we'll talk later about his visionary leadership style. And the last point that I would like to make is about teamwork. As I mentioned, Steve was also a very big believer in teamwork. I'd like to now talk about the transformational characteristics of Steve Jobs. And I'm going to refer to a research report that was published in the Journal of Leadership Education. So the assistant professor and the associate professor that did the report different terms within different published work about leadership, and for each term they put a count that term actually appeared. So with Steve Jobs, we can see that the highest count was 32, and this was innovation. So he had an innovation as a characteristic. This was followed by created and creating, which was 25 count. Then this was followed by leader, which was 15 count, and the fourth place was inspired. So a lot of authors from reports and journal articles found him as inspiring. And then in the fifth place was transformed. So to delve even deeper in that, there is theorists called Hackman and Johnson, and they created 5 characteristics of a transformational leader. 3 of those characteristics appeared, and these were creative, visionary, and passionate. And all this shows us and definitely justifies that Steve was an incredible transformational leader. I'll now explain 2 accounts from Debbie Coleman, a team manager at the early days of Apple. She explains, taking on the big boys. Steve Jobs, and I quote, "It was empowering. It enabled Jobs to inspire his team to change the course of computer history within a fraction of the resources of Xerox and IBM." This shows us that through his leadership, they were actually able to have a competitive advantage over already established computing companies in this industry. She also explains that her work was self-fulfilling at Apple. This is also a key characteristics of followers' success and growth. She quotes, "You did the impossible because you didn't realize that it was impossible."
The analysis of 4 I's have been very important to understand the transformational style of leadership. The first I is individualized consideration. Steve Jobs has been very supportive of his teammates. Even during meetings, he never used the pronoun I. Instead, he said we. We as a group worked together. But according to few sources and articles, they say that this aspect was absent in Steve Jobs. But what I believe is that he's been very supportive of his team members, or we can say employees. The second I is intellectual stimulation. A lot of the employees are very creative and very innovative. So Jobs brought a bigger and bigger challenges so that they are timely stimulated with innovative ideas anytime. And the third I is inspirational motivation. He's been a great motivator. Jobs has been an inspirational mentor to most of the employees. We can say all the employees who are very close to him. Even he's motivated youngsters to envision success. And the fourth I is idealized influence. A lot of people have so much influence from him that they even look up to his leadership style till date. And even after his death, people remember him for his hard work, his smartness, and his tendency to take the right decision at the right time. People still respect him. A visionary and charismatic leader. A visionary leader is the one who serves to energize and motivate the followers towards the future and provides meaning for people's life and work and sets the standards of excellence in an organization. So these 4 points are very important to understand how Steve Jobs was such a great visionary leader. The first one is own vision. He used strong communication to merge vision with his colleagues and also the consumers. The second point is he had strong communication skills required for the followers to understand his vision. So Bill Atkinson, who worked at Apple, he is a computer engineer. He once quoted that he can deceive himself. It allowed him to con people into believing his vision because he has personally embraced and internalized it. So this quote actually means that because of Steve Jobs' communication skills, such great communication skills, he could persuade people in believing his vision. The third point is he inspires the followers by engaging them in his vision. Example, the Apple Retreat and whiteboard sessions. So every year, he would take his top 100 employees for a retreat, and then on the last day, he would stand in front of the whiteboard and he would ask, what are the 10 things we should be doing next? All of his employees, they would fight to get their suggestions on the board, and Steve Jobs would list them down, and then he would cross out those suggestions which he finds it's very silly, and then after that the group would come up with the top best, or we can say the top 10 suggestions, and from that Steve Jobs would slash out the bottom 7 and would announce that only 3 can be done. So through this example we can understand that how Steve Jobs was very interactive with his teammates, he was engaging them in different activities. And the fourth point is create strong trust, commitment and motivation from the employees. Example, Steve Jobs reacting to critics about intensive working conditions. So Debbie Coleman, she was the manufacturing manager at Apple. So she once said that he would shout at a meeting saying, "You never did anything." It was like an hourly occurrence. Yet I consider myself the most luckiest person in this world to have worked with him. So through this, what Debbie Coleman has said, we can understand that she trusted him, she's committed to him and his vision. But after all this, she was criticized harshly in many occasions. But this criticism is constructive criticism, which people should be adaptive and open to.
They don't need to be managed at all. What they need is a common vision. And that's what leadership is. What leadership is having a vision, being able to articulate that so the people around you can understand it. One of us.
And everybody just wanted to work, not because it was work that had to be done, but it was because something that we really believed in, that was just going to really make a difference. And that's what kept the whole thing going.
We all wanted exactly the same thing, and instead of spending our time arguing about what the computer should be, we all knew what the computer should be, and we just went and did it.
Apple had its own way of marketing themselves, which said, "Think different." Steve Jobs was genuinely a remarkable business leader, and his willingness to focus was followed by the desire to simplify things. In fact, Apple's first brochure said, "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." So we can say that his marketing strategy is both analytical and calculative at the same time. Steve Jobs' primary focus was on developing the product. He believed that the profits would naturally flow in once the focus is shifted on developing the best quality product. and he paused whenever he felt unsatisfied with the product because he only wanted the best to be brought out. And this undying passion for perfection is one of the main reasons behind the success of Apple. Steve Jobs, when he took over Apple in 1997, he could turn the entire situation around. He could turn the share price from just $6 to $30 per share in just 6 years. And since 2003, the company's sales have risen steadily. Thus, there is no doubt that Steve Jobs has brought success and wealth to Apple.